Namaste, happy friends. Welcome to this special episode on Happy Jack Yoga podcast. I am Hanna. I am founder and the director of education of Happy Jack Yoga, and I'm calling from Norway today. And today I'm so honored and thrilled to introduce you to one of the foundational figures of Happy Jack Yoga that you might have never met or heard of, or you've heard us mention her many times. So today I'm here with Anna Elfving, who is in Helsinki, Finland. Hi, Anna.
Hi, so nice to be here, Hannah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Today, I'm so thrilled to be talking with you, Anna, because so many times in Happy Jack Yoga, um, we or I feel deeply grateful for the fact that somebody scheduled a time. Somebody said, let's all meet at 10 a.m. Eastern for a podcast episode, for example, or in a sharing circle, or any of the practices that we do, because otherwise we wouldn't be here. And most of us, I think, Anna, in a way, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. Because when Jack and I lived in Finland, we were two yoga teachers just doing our thing best we could. And you said to Jack that we should organize a 200-hour teacher training. And it was something that we secretly wanted to do in our hearts. We felt like we want to do it. But, we still felt like, who are we to teach anybody how to teach yoga? And the fact that you, such an amazing, incredible human being, we both look up to you, that you should mention and say that to us, it really planted the seed in our heart. And immediately we took action. Immediately we applied with the Yoga Alliance. We went through the whole process that it takes to get certified by the Yoga Alliance, which is an international kind of yoga teacher alliance. And then you were in the first ever 200-hour teacher training that we ever led. And just for context, the 200-hour, I know we talk a lot about it here, and sometimes maybe some of you might get sick of me always referring to it, but it is the practice that we do. It is the foundation of everything that Happy Jack Yoga is. So if it wasn't for you, Anna, I don't know that we would have organized our content in such a kind of a maybe kind of dynamic and concise, let's say, format if it wasn't for you saying and kind of believing in us from the beginning. So this was 9 years ago. And I wanted to ask you, Anna, what you remember from those times. Do you remember that you mentioned it to Jack?
Yeah, yeah, I remember that when we scheduled this call, I was thinking about it in the car because just to give a little backstory, at the time, I had three small children at home. Was working a career that took me to a lot of travels, and life was very busy at work and at home, and I kind of like lost myself a little bit in the process. So I
Can you
had
share?
done a lot of yoga.
Sorry, can you share what you worked with?
Yes, so I was working with the President Ahtisaari here in Finland for the crisis management initiative. That was my career, and it was amazing, fantastic. Uh, when he got designated to be the special envoy for the future status process for Kosovo, I moved with him to Vienna. So we were there. That was before, children. But that was very exciting, and it was very like life was super busy, and there was no time, at the time I didn't even feel like the need to have any kind of spiritual practice. And then I moved with my husband to Washington D.C., and my first daughter was born there, and we would move back to Finland, and my second two were born there, and in that process of life, many probably resonate, kind of lost myself a little bit. And I had this like there was a voice inside that wanted something, how it's like a little child and you want to, to find what it is that it wants. And so you start seeking. And I had done a lot of Ashtanga yoga when I was a teenager. I don't know why Ashtanga, I think that's came easy in Helsinki, it's quite popular. And so I decided to go back to yoga, and I had been to classes, I think, to Tuli yoga. And when I saw this poster that said, I think it was lead with your heart, or like
Yeah.
open your heart with, Happy Jack. And I was like, oh, I love it because I love yoga in English. It's more of a heart language compared to Finnish. And so I went there. I had no idea what to expect. And I walk into the room, and like, there's this guy with long hair. It's like, welcome. I was like, oh, it's okay, interesting. And we sat down in circle, me and all these like random people that I've never met before. And it started with sharing, each of us sharing. And I don't really remember like really what was said. I just remember like, it was like, it was like mystical. It was like intriguing because it was different. And and then we went through the dynamic yoga and the body got really a good sweat. And there is like a breakthrough session. I think we were doing headstands or trying to. And then coming to the end when and Jack started singing in Shavasana, I think all senses were fulfilled like in my body. And something inside just like broke and I just started crying. And I remember like, oh my God, like, what is this? It's like, oh, it felt like such a release of whatever it was that was pent up, because I've always been a bit shy, a little private and a little secluded, but there's a lot going on inside. But it felt like, oh, it was like something broke open. I was like, oh my God, like this is so amazing. I wrote Jack afterwards, like, Jack, if you ever, consider doing we hadn't met because you weren't there, Hannah, but if you ever consider doing a yoga teacher training, like, please let me know. And that's probably when he went to talk to you. And, 6 months later, I got the email, like, all set up.
Wow.
So it was without hesitation. I was like signed up immediately, and at that time it was in person in Helsinki. Right, we met weekends over a year. Yeah,
Hmm.
very
Wow.
special. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that whole journey.
Mm.
That was sounds like it was very impactful. And yeah, the first workshops that Jack was leading, he would travel from studio to studio, country to country, and lead a workshop called Lead with Your Heart, like you mentioned. And I love hearing that he put you guys in a circle right away because that's what we still do, even with, you know, I would say like up to 100 people, you can make a circle, depending on the size of the room. Now we do the circles online on Zoom since the pandemic, but that is something so foundational about Happy Jack Yoga. And I think one of the key elements that will maybe for some of us have the impact of deep healing, because it's kind of a relational way of being together versus in a bubble by ourselves. And there's benefits to both. We need our private space and we need our practice that is, inward focusing, but I don't know that all of us are primed and have the platforms and the places in our lives where we actually connect in a circle from a heart-centered place. And in fact, now 9 years later, I've just finished creating our sharing circle facilitation teacher training, which will launch next week. So that feels like such a, how you say it, like a circle, closing circle right now that you would be here today on this podcast just when we're launching a new teacher training. But going back to those times, it sounded like very similar to me that when you found Happy Jack, you were busy, and then something shifted in the workshop that was a little bit unusual. Like a lot of people have, we do have a lot of, let's say, tension in the body, and sometimes when it leaves the body, there's a release. Sometimes it comes with tears, sometimes it doesn't. But it seems like something magical happens when we come together, and it's almost like what I call relational mindfulness, where we practice in a circle and we everyone does their own practice, and the things that we work through are very personal, but there's something that we share, the witnessing of each other, that I think is maybe the Happy Jack Yoga magic, where Jack encourages us to, even in the yoga asana, like in an up dog, he'll say to find someone across the room and see them in the eyes, for example.
Mm.
So
Yeah, and I remember, doing. It was very different. It was very different kind of yoga. I mean, every yoga is different, but I had only been to classroom yoga in the sense that you're in your rows and and then when we came to doing airplane, when you do airplane together, and I got and you look in each other's eyes, but it's not only that, it's like you use the energy of the group to stay in the pose, rather than you're in your mind by yourself, like forcing it. And I'm not saying everyone forces it at all, and now if I'm by myself, I usually, try to receive energy from the earth so that I'm able to, like, forget time and just become empowered. But I really love with Happy Jack Yoga what you said. It's like a group connection and how you can use that energy that is created, like for each, and you contribute your part. And sometimes you might be tired, it doesn't matter. And then others can carry you in
yeah,
a sense. Then sometimes you contribute. So it's very, very special, very different. It was very different at the time when it was like work and you're like very in your own thing. And in Finland also, I mean, you're all in different countries, but in Finland we kind of not that much speak to neighbors, so we're kind of solitary in a sense. And this was, it was like, it was something I think that I have wanted and needed inside, but I didn't know what it was or where to find it. And then it just, magically how things go in the right time appeared. Yeah.
yeah. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. And also, like when the student is ready, the community appears. It's not just about the teacher. And that's something we always are really clear about with Jack and myself. We've been facilitating trainings for many years, and people say that it's something special about us. And yes, I will be the first one to say that Happy Jack is special, and but he's not the only one. Everyone is special. And it's not about the teacher, it's about the community, the way we come together. And I think it takes courage to be the one to initiate connection. And that's what we practice as part of our yoga in Happy Jack Yoga. So that's how we often say, like, the leader goes first. That means if you're the teacher, you're going to be the one who initiates and say, let's put the mats in a circle. Before that, even, you'll be the leader of your own life and say, hey, let me do a teacher training and see what happens. And that's what I love about the 200 hour. And that's why I never get tired talking about our 200-hour teacher training. And I know every 200-hour teacher training can be deeply transformational when it comes to our place in the world and the state of our heart and what we expect our life to become, like from now towards looking towards the future. But our 200-hour teacher training is especially focused on personal transformation more than maybe alignment or, I don't know, sequencing. We use a very classical sequence of yoga, but the whole purpose, we use yoga to kind of free ourselves from the cages, maybe that could be called ignorance, but also shyness or disconnection, all the different ways that our, let's say, disconnection shows up in our lives. That's what we can use the 200-hour teacher training for. And now having led these trainings for 9 years, I'm still deeply passionate about that work because it's it's not like you've done your 200-hour and then you're done. It's like something you keep on living. It's something that it's kind of like a lifestyle or a practice. And that's why I think a lot of us Happy Jack Yogis, we're still friends and we still find it relevant what we did 9 years ago or 9 weeks ago or 9 minutes ago, because it's part of who we become. And that's why we call it the hero's journey. Like our 200 hour is called the hero's journey. And all of you here on this call know this because you heard about our work. But this is why it's also beautiful, Anna, that you would be willing to come on our podcast today because you were there when we first did it in public.
Hmm.
And you mentioned at that
And
time
what I
we
have,
mm, yeah, go
no,
ahead.
no, go ahead. I just say that, you know, what I find amazing is that looking at the content of today's hero's journey and the one in 2016, it's not that different, which I find amazing is that, you know, it was almost like you knew already then what needed to be in the package. Of course, now it's more yoga, philosophy also, and I guess a bit more alignment, but like the major pillars of self-inquiry, right?
Yeah.
Of finding yourself, like the finding joy. And you wanted to say something, but I wanted to talk about finding joy just a little bit,
Yeah.
or hero's journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's just kind of pre-frame what that is. So the 200 hour, we call it the hero's journey, and it's because it's based on obviously Joe Campbell's work, but then one of the first things we encourage everyone to do who take our training, and I think it's in week 1 or week 2, we have them watch a documentary on YouTube called Finding Joe. And it's, I guess we could say now, a little bit an older documentary on finding one's own calling. And when I first saw it, I did not fall in love with it. So I encourage anyone to watch it. It's for free on YouTube. If you don't love it immediately, keep your heart open because most people have deep transformations as a result of it. And the Finding Joe documentary was gifted to Jack when he got his cancer diagnosis. So he watched it in the hospital when he was recovering from his surgery. And so he found that it was so deeply impactful that he wanted to include it in the teacher training. And so
Mhm.
what was your experience?
Yeah, yeah. So I wanted to mention because I immediately fell in love with it, the Finding Joe. I thought it was immensely beautiful, and hearing Jack's story, and also with his alcoholism, and everything that he shares so vulnerably, and your own loss of your husband. And at the time I was like, well, I love this idea, but everything's so fine in my life, like,
Yeah.
where does it lead me? And it was interesting because at the end of the 200 hour, I don't know, it was a couple of months later, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, kind of out of the blue, that really shook me at the core. And I remember I met you at the yoga festival at the time, and Jack was, he was like, he said, oh, I can't remember his exact words, but it was almost like, oh, congratulations. And this is something I love with Happy Jack Yoga. It's like, things are not happening to you, but they're happening for you. And I'm really grateful that I had the 200 hour, and I had the Finding Joy, and I had all the tools when I got diagnosed, because it was such a, it just felt easier to navigate. I also had community I could reach out, and I had uplifting people.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, so I set out on my own hero's journey. And for me, like the hero's journey, or the heroine's journey, I also like to call it, is you have your ordinary life and everything's beautiful and your routines, and then like you feel this, like there is this pull, you have it inside of you, or you feel drawn somewhere, and then you move in that direction. But sometimes you hear it but you don't act on it. It's like you really want to, but oh, the kids and the work and the blah 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 blah, and then there might be like a knock on your door, like, hello, maybe you should move on it, and you're like, no, I don't have the money. I can. And then you're beaten with a hammer, and you can get sick, or you get a trauma or something, just something to propel you out of that. Like somewhere upstairs, they're like having a joke, like, let's get her out of this regular life and throw her into this journey. And this journey, I feel it's not like becoming something else. It's like an unbecoming almost, like, because you're going into the core to find yourself, how I feel. Like for me, this is my subjective interpretation.
Yeah.
of everything that happens. You slay your dragons in the sense that you meet your fears and your dark sides and all the shadows, as you call nowadays, and you put light on them. Even it's not that you solve them or you come to like final, best version of yourself, but it's like you unbecome, and then you come back,
Yeah.
to where you were, a different person, probably, and hopefully a better human being, a better community member, of course, a better, mother or daughter, or whatever you are in the world. And that's one cycle, but then there's a next cycle and the next one, so it almost feels like a spiral. You like you're moving through these journeys or these cycles, all the time from a different starting point. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's so true. Like how the hero's journey as a kind of a myth is very much, you can kind of see the yogic journey in that kind of template where
Yeah.
the yoga poses, even we put them in a kind of a hero's journey type of sequence, and just borrowing classical yoga sequence. So we haven't obviously invented that in any way, but the way we kind of look at yoga is that there's this potential for transformation. And I love how you said that, when you joined the training, you maybe couldn't relate with addiction or deep grief that, for example, I had and have navigated in my adult life. Like sometimes you think like, oh, this type of transformation is only for people who have crisis. But I do think, that suffering is like it can have different tastes and flavors. Sometimes it's because, I mean, let's agree that suffering is part of every single human being's life. The Buddha said it. It's not me. There's either like a low level suffering that is kind of thin layer over, maybe it's boredom, maybe it's not being fulfilled in some way, or it can be trauma or tragedy or a diagnosis or a life transition that you did not choose. Then that is more like you have to kind of, it stops you in your tracks. And typically people meet you with either disconnection or pity or something like that. Whereas I think what I hear in your share, Anna, is also that in our community, we don't do that because we can see that that's a process of transformation, not to minimize if someone has tragedy, but it will change us. Whatever we experience will change us, no matter how intense the suffering, so-called suffering, is. And we recently revisited everything that Happy Jack Yoga is, and we're like restructuring everything that we do as a community, and we rewrote our mission. And a part of that mission says that we're a sanctuary for healing, where we meet our pain and we transform it into presence. And I think that was so beautifully said and is so true of what the hero's journey and
Mm.
yoga simply does with us. And the 200 hour is just kind of a little bit of a kind of an organized journey that you can go through to see what comes out of you. And it's going to put you into uncomfortable places. Like when you mentioned the dragons and the like our inner fears that we might have, but we don't have always the opportunity to work on them or meet them unless we go to therapy or, yeah, have challenges. But in the hero's journey, we look at what comes up when we challenge ourselves,
Hmm.
right? And
Mm.
then in a way it's we're like Jack is, that's one of the things that is so paradoxical about him. He really is, and he will be the first one to say this. He says he's a people pleaser. He's someone who wants to create kind of peace and harmony in all things. But then he has and is oftentimes the facilitator who does not hesitate in challenging the students, like putting them in a circle, like asking them to share with a partner, right? and to actually leave your yoga mat and do a pose with a friend. Like most people will not feel comfortable doing that or would never choose that
Hmm.
because it's easier not to. And then it's fascinating to notice how liberating it is to
Yeah.
let that happen and let it change you. So looking back on if you remember, like you shared some of the transformation, but like if you were to look back, how did the whole 200-hour impact you and your work life and your decisions? Because you mentioned like before you took the training, you were so busy,
Yeah.
but you weren't like suffering. You didn't have like big T trauma.
Mm. I think the 200-hour impacted me. I mean, it still impacts me today because I felt something was cracked open. And for me, I mean, we all come with different issues, right? I mean, not issues. I mean, we all have something that we maybe want to work on, or something where we feel that we are restricted in. And for me, it was that I really felt sharing like out loud was hard, and not just sharing, talking, but like deep emotional things, or being able to laugh and cry. Like it was almost like I had a throat chakra thing. And I think actually it's quite can be ancestral for like a lot of maternal, like the mother's line. We're not allowed to say, not allowed to do. It's almost like for generations women have been silenced, and there's
Mhm.
this fire inside and it wants to like like scream, but there's no, I didn't know how to do it. And this whole 200-hour journey, it just like was the start. And I'm not saying after 200 hours, woohoo, like, I mean, it was the start. And then it just takes you places. And today, obviously, so many years later, so many trainings, like so much life lived and other experiences, like I feel so free. I didn't feel free at the time.
Mm.
And just because there is this challenge, usually we don't want to be put in uncomfortable positions or places, but I have to say that is the gold, like really.
Mhm.
And being offered these opportunities to write a letter to someone, if there's something you feel has been left unsaid, or like say it out loud. For me, those were impactful. Maybe for someone else it's something else.
Yeah.
um, and I think this whole idea to live in integrity, I think integrity is really a big part of Happy Jack Yoga,
Mhm.
and to live as you preach, in a way, or like
Yeah.
being true to your word. In the
Yeah.
best, obviously we're all human, and we do our best. But
Mhm.
yeah, so I am very grateful for Happy Jack Yoga. It's a foundation for of my own like personal development.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I love that you said it made you feel free. I had that same experience.
Mm.
It's somehow freeing, and it's a gradual freeing for most of us, especially, yeah, I'm sure it's not a gender thing, but it's true that a lot of us were kind of told to, or we kind of assumed we were told to not take up too much space, but the process of the hero's journey and the practices that we go through can be really freeing. And
Yeah.
I also love how you said, like, it was the first step, and it's a really good first step. And then it becomes our practice. That's why I think, in a way, the 200 hour is a little bit like putting money in the bank. Like it's a gift that keeps on giving
Yeah.
because these are practices. It's not that there's no quick fix. I guess that's the bad news and we all know that as adults now. There is no quick fix. It is how we practice and just even like I think that something happens. I've tried to like dig up in research what happens when we recognize something, like the power of recognition, mutual recognition happens often in therapy or in friendships when you share your heart.
Mm.
In Happy Jack Yoga, it can happen in a community. Anyone, obviously, all of us only share to the extent we feel that is appropriate and feel safe. But, the fact that we can together recognize areas of like, whoa, maybe we might not even know that we've been holding back our voice because it's not so evident. We just kind of, you know, we think we settle quickly, and when we together notice, we put the, how do you say, like you connect dots in new
Mhm.
ways. You have like new insights come as a result of being in a community like this. And oftentimes, Happy Jack Yoga, we say that the 200 hours is like just the first step. It's the foundation to everything that we do. It's really the ground we stand on. And you mentioned integrity. Integrity is something that we talk a lot about in Happy Jack Yoga because it's kind of like gravity. Like it it makes things work. It's how things become workable, but also like think about alignment. If my shoulders are on top of my hips, then that means I'm not overcompensating with my muscles and so forth. So it we talk a lot about integrity in the physical yoga asana, but also in our emotional lives and in the way we speak and show up, because if I feel that I'm in integrity, that I'm speaking my own truth, then I don't have to pretend. So somehow integrity links into authenticity, and then it feels a little bit maybe less threatening to be confident. Like you said, a lot of us are not typically talking in front of big groups. That's one of the biggest human fears, is to speak in front of groups. And though when we find that it's okay to be authentic and I'm in integrity, this is kind of true for me, and we can be open and flexible around our truths, then it becomes less frightening to express ourselves authentically, because that's what the actually the thing that we might not say so much about this training is that the hidden kind of gem there is that you find your own true authentic voice. It's not about becoming Happy Jack or me, for God's sakes, but it is about you becoming you fully. And of course, that's not a quick fix. It's a lifelong practice. It is an implementing of the different tenets.
Yeah.
And then it leads to freedom, and then it leads to maybe transformation. And some of us end up teaching, others don't, but it's somehow something that the whole 200 hour is a way of kind of being in the world, I find,
Hmm.
right?
It's like finding both, I think, both strength in body and mind, like both sides is the process. And then the freedom, and then you can, like you said, because it's authentic, you're yourself, you can be, you don't have to worry.
Mhm.
And also what I love a lot about these sharing circles is that when you witness someone else go through something or share, because it's not, you don't have to share if you don't want to, but you learn so much from others,
Yeah.
right, and what they go through. So even though you might not share that time, you still receive so much, which is beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny, like when we share, like for example, me, I'm a widow. Most people are not widows. But if I share about my experience, it seems like the more personal I can be, the
Hmm.
more universal my content is, or like the more relatable it becomes. Like somehow everyone can relate to some layer of loss, or it seems like when one person has a breakthrough or an insight, then all of us do. When we witness each other um, in our sharing, then somehow we create connection, whether it's emotionally or in other ways, through the sharing circles. And so, for those of you who've never been to our in-person trainings, no matter which training, what happens is every morning we show up in the yoga room, and we have the mats in a circle, and we're typically in silence, because if it's a retreat, then we go to bed at night and we agree that we kind of have some personal space then. and everyone is in silence and they go to bed, and then in the morning we wake up and the first words that we say is our mantras and our ohms as we sit in the circle. And we do some breathing exercises, then we do some journaling, then we do something called Guess Who's in the House. That's a practice where everybody gets to dance and lead others in the dance. Highly uncomfortable for a lot of people. But if you make it as a play, then you can find your 5-year-old self again. Sometimes that happens. And then we go back into either into a circle where we sit down and we discuss a little bit, we share what we're present to, or we'll go into our yoga practice. We'll do the yoga sequence and maybe we'll do a sharing circle afterwards. And the way that works is that we sit in a circle and the facilitator might ask if anyone would like to share what they're present to right now. How was your practice? What worked? How are you feeling? Did you maybe have an insight? And then someone might share that they had an insight, and then the others, it kind of sparks conversations and sparks our hearts. And then when you do a training, then that happens many times. And in the same day, we might have another sharing circle in the evening just to kind of check in on where everyone is emotionally. And it's a beautiful way to make friends. And I think about, like, I know that I'm the founder of Happy Jack Yoga together with Jack, but I think about the loneliness pandemic and I think about our sense of isolation. Like the COVID pandemic was a great example of that. Or even us now sitting in Zooms, like we're all sitting in these little squares and we could stay that way and we would be just fine. However, something magical happens when we come together live right here. And yes, you can have insights listening to this later, but oftentimes it's in the moment where someone says something, it's like a seed that's being planted in your heart. And then it starts to grow as you practice, as you live your lives. Everyone brings their seeds in their hearts into our own lives. And then we come back together again. And that's how we mutually kind of recognize the insights that we have. And that's what our practice is in Happy Jack Yoga. And you're always welcome to come just as you are. And there's no expectation on anyone. And that's also freeing to know that there is kind of the regularity that we're always going to be here. We're always meeting every week, many times. Happy Jack Yoga community meets, whether you're doing the 200-hour or not. And by the way, now we've rearranged. So 9 years ago, Anna, when you first said, "Why don't you guys organize and make a 200-hour teacher training?" And I remember people doubting us, saying like, "Who are you guys to teach anybody anything?" And we wondered that too. So we had no certainty. We just tried. And look what a beautiful, so many people have had beautiful life-changing experiences. Some people have changed careers and opened studios and found the love of their lives. Wink, wink to Saga, if she's listening.
So,
Maybe she'll come on the podcast one day. And so, yeah, that's just because Anna said to Jack, "Why don't you organize your content?" And then Jack said, "Yeah, should we do it?" And I believed in Jack and supported him in the application process and then in creating all the content. And here we are, 10 years later. We've traveled the world. We've done this training, I don't know, on every continent except Australia. And we still keep coming together because there's something expansive about coming together, which means finding connection in each other's hearts. And I feel like it's difficult to describe it, but it's not difficult to live this way, in the Happy Jack Yoga community way. Like, I feel like I have so many friends, you being one of the most foundational ones, Anna, that I've met because we're in this together, right? We've been doing yoga together, doing life together, and sometimes there's periods where we can't connect as much, but we always come right back where we left, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And yeah, that is so true. And I'm thinking about Happy Jack Yoga and being a yoga teacher, which obviously I never wanted. I mean, that's not why I joined Happy Jack Yoga. I joined because there was this urge inside that it was something I needed to do for me. And I think that, as I said, on the course of, finding myself, the inner strength you get from that, of just, coming to understand who you are actually, that gives so much strength in being a yoga teacher. Because in the end, like the asana, that's not, it's like this little, anyone basically can do it, but you have to find yourself first. At least that's how I feel it.
Mm,
And then you can be a teacher, for others. And obviously not a teacher, because I also like always to teach in circle, because we're all in a circle, we're all the same. It's
yeah.
just someone is calling out the poses, but we're all, it's not the hierarchy, which I love with Happy Jack Yoga a lot.
Mm,
And I love personally with you and Jack is that you never changed. You've always been the same, like really true to your word, and to, the innermost core of like humanity, and like of goodness, and sharing. And that's why I've been here all these years. I've been with
mm,
you, to all these different countries, and you keep growing. And now Jack is more into yoga, philosophy, obviously finding himself on that bhakti path. And you're the mother. Sometimes I wish you would speak more about the children here in the podcast, to be relatable, because that's yoga too. But I find, like, there was never a hesitation or a moment that I thought, oh, maybe I should look at another yoga school. And I know there are many good ones, but really, I'm you are so beautiful people with Jack. And we didn't talk about me talking about you like this. It's just generally from my heart, and I'm really, 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 happy that everything unraveled in this way.
oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I love taking trainings and, training with in other, atmospheres and doing like I'm doing yoga therapy and yoga psychotherapy, and Jack is doing a lot of yoga philosophy and spirituality, and that is beautiful. And you, in a way, like in there all the different styles of yoga, you kind of know what you get. And what I've found with Happy Jack Yoga, with us, what's difficult to kind of vocalize is what you get is the community, because it's oftentimes people think, well, I don't really like it's not something you Google for. Like, how do I find my community? How do I find uh, that type of yogic communities maybe? But you come for the yoga and you stay for the community, is what we often say. And like you say, there's no hierarchy here because we're all students, and Jack and me included, always a student, sometimes a teacher. And this is true for all of the trainings that we facilitate. And the whole community idea is that we're in it together and that we witness each other. And that is like it, I often talk about it like how mindfulness or spirituality to me is observing what reveals itself moment by moment. What is it that is in my heart right now, and how do we recognize it and share it and not being alone with it? Like they say about trauma, that the intensity or the kind of the negative impact of adversity or trauma is that we're the aloneness, the sense of isolation. It kind of can encapsulate you. And that's what's traumatic, not the event itself. Like, of course, we don't want to have difficult things happen to anyone, but if we can share them and carry them together, it's less isolating. And then the trauma will kind of bite less intensely. And that's what I think the Happy Jack Yoga community, that's what you kind of get in our system. But in a way, It's like you're trying to describe ice cream. If you never tasted ice cream, how can I describe it? But this is our effort to recently we've been thinking about like how can we describe and share this. And that's why I'm so grateful that you would be willing to share your perspective. And I hope we get to speak with many others about what the 200-hour really actually is for them and what it did for you and what it does for you. And and that's what I'm hearing you say is that it's something that still impacts you and has maybe because now I know you've done other trainings and chosen things and become more and more you, I think, as a result of being in the training. And you
Exactly.
talked, yeah.
Mm. No, no, exactly. I think that is so very true that it is the foundational one. And so if anyone is listening to this and maybe is doubting or like wondering about money or time or so, I would just say, just go for it. Yeah. Because really I don't think anyone has ever regretted doing it. And nowadays it's online, right? So you can do it in your own time.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, I found it the reason why I decided to join a 200-hour in the first place was
Yeah.
Jack saying to me, what was it exactly? I've shared this so many times. Like, Jack said he wouldn't be who he is today if it wasn't for his first 200-hour. And then I thought, like, well, who would I be? Like, what would I discover about myself if
Mm.
I also took a yoga teacher training? And also at that time, I didn't know if I was going to teach at all. But you can discover something. And we don't have a lot of arenas in life, I find, where you go and do that. So that's why the 200-hour is a great kind of tool to
Hmm.
discover what else you are that you did not know about yourself.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
But you talked about mothering as well. Over the years, how has that evolved with your yoga? Like, we often don't divide life into like yoga life and spiritual life and then mothering. I'm sure you don't either. It all melts into who you are is consistent in every area of your life. So, how have you now, in these past 10 years, seen
Yeah.
yourself grow?
Well, I think it comes again down to, finding out who you are. And the more you do, the more peaceful and balanced and at ease you are. And of course, no one is, perfect. So whatever happens, whatever reactions you have that are human, I think for me, I think the major thing I've learned or I have released is that, okay, so I can be sad in front of people and my children. I think it's actually really good. And we talked about this a lot, like if something happens, so let them see you go through something and see how you handle it. So I think the way to deal with things. So these are all like
Mm,
amazing for being a human. Like how do you deal with disappointment? How do you deal with trauma or tragedy? Right? And in front of your children,
hmm.
in the way that they see like it leading somewhere, you know?
Yeah.
And when you're happy, being really happy is I think experiencing more fully emotions, I find. And just to sort of let them be part of it, not like let's do this together, but you can be in a room like do yoga and your have your altar and things and they watch, they see how
Yeah.
you interact with other people. I think that's for me is very important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are you saying that like you can be authentic with your kids
Yeah.
um and not like create disconnect, like you can
Or
have
like not
connection?
shield them too much from everything.
Mm,
Because life is raw and if there is, and I learned this the hard way because something happened and I was afraid of sharing, but there's no time to go into that part now. But I find like I was shielded a lot from a lot of things when I was little. And
mm,
so I think I didn't know. And so I don't mean that my parents, I wasn't, the fact that I didn't use my voice, I think it wasn't my parents who said me, don't use your voice. No, they're very open. But we grow up looking at the adults in our life and see how they behave and kind of take on that pattern.
Yeah.
And so I want my children to be able to feel, like feel. So when you're sad, be sad. When you're happy, be happy and allow it to release. Because then when you release it, it's much better.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, it's like our culture kind of might have prime us in certain ways, and I love that you want to show your children who you really are and not to use them for your processes, obviously, but to show them that what how life impacts you. And that's something I also felt strongly because my husband died and so abruptly and unexpectedly that it left me thinking that my kids won't know who he is, really. And then I thought, I really want to make sure that they know who I am and that they would know what I actually thought and what was difficult. And of course, there's age appropriately you'll need to manage and personality wise as well. And there's a time and space for that. But that's that's really beautiful and I think very kind of happy jack yoga-y because we're very much about being authentic versus
Mhm.
um being scripted. And yoga teachers typically you get a lot of projections on yoga teachers like what and we have like internalized projections. Every one of us here will think like what should a yoga teacher be like or what is a yoga teacher nowadays. It's let's say you know, very popular to take teacher trainings. And we have all kinds of ideas about what it means to be a yoga teacher, that you should always be peaceful and zen. And I don't know, we have different projections. But what you're talking about here, with even with your children, I find is true as yoga teachers too, and as friends, and as, you know, all the different roles that we have in our lives, that we could have the freedom to not have to act or put on these roles that we just assume that are supposed to be there. But life isn't about roles, is it?
No. And I think this is also something with the community because we all go through different things at different stages. We're men and women, and we have our own inclinations, and to be able to have a community where you can share what's on your heart or ask questions, and because there are older mothers and women who haven't had kids yet. For example, I'm speaking as a woman now for that, or it's because you know that everyone has gone through the 200 hours. You're kind of on the same page
Yes.
in a way.
Yeah.
So that's how I love it when I meet someone. It's like, oh, you've done the happy jack yoga, because then you're already connected.
Yeah. You're friends
Yeah.
right away.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is true. That is really um really amazing. It's true. It always happens. Like we have
Yeah.
something in common if you take an hour, 200 hour. There's a question. Do you think Anna would like to people to, yeah, do you have an Instagram account or something? We'll put it in the show notes for
It's
sure.
my name. It's my name. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's it's tricky to spell it, but we'll put it in the show notes for
Yeah.
sure.
Anna Elvin Gomez. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. So you're still teaching, right? Every here and there, you're teaching workshops. What
Yeah.
are you doing nowadays?
So, well, a long story short, I worked a lot with President Ahtisaari until I got sick, and then that's when I left. Or I don't like the word sick, but I was diagnosed with this disorder, and then I changed path totally. I became a health coach, yoga teacher, and I did a lot of different trainings. And a couple of years after that, it's almost like I created the Boost Your Immune System course for you guys, which is so hilarious because after that, I got diagnosed again with rheumatoid arthritis, which was really hard. And I don't know if we've spoken about it, but it's almost like I was wondering, so what is it that I'm not seeing? Like I have all these tools, like what is it that is going on? And it was quite hard because it was really, really painful. Like it was very, very painful. And I tried for a very long time to get well by habit or like food. And
Yeah.
it's a long story short, but I think I thought, oh, this is my, heroine's journey. I'm going to go out and I'm going to, take care of myself and I get well and then I can, teach to that. That was
Mhm.
totally not what I was supposed to
You
happen.
didn't you train as a nutritionist as
Yeah,
well?
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
mm,
Yeah, so I have a lot of information and I joined this Paddison program in Australia. It was an amazing program that it's like very, what you're supposed to eat. And I had this coach in Sweden who had the same issues and she's gotten well. But in the end, I think for me, like what I had to come to was kind of like fall down on my knees and realize like this is it. Like this is life, and sort of ah, I don't have to
mm,
fix it. Like I can
mm,
be in it. I can find my peace in this. That this is what's happening, and in that, I don't know what the right word is. It's like an acceptance.
yeah.
That's what I found that
Mm.
now I kind of get it. Like finally now at this old age,
You're not that
like
old.
and it's so beautiful. And I set on a path this when I got sick the second time to find myself even further. And I've done so many more like shamanic work and family constellations and different kinds of healing modalities and everything is of course pushed me a little forward. But in the end, it's just we have a lot of the answers within. You know, we have
Yes.
a lot of the answers within. So it's just like fall down on my knees and sort of accept and
Mm,
somehow be at peace with what is. And now I feel really, really, really good. And
mm.
so yeah, I'm still teaching yoga here and there, not fully. We have this. We also facilitate with my sister-in-law these women's circles. They're all about sharing. So
Yeah.
I'm very feel because I think in this age there isn't really. There used to be wise women. We lived in a tribe, and there were wise women or older elders who
Mm.
could assist and help, but we're quite alone. And we're
Yeah.
so busy that when we meet friends, we don't have time to go deeper into
Yeah.
like what's the meaning of life questions.
Yeah.
And so these circles I find is a way where like there is space because there's no time.
Yes.
You're in that space and like to really feel your heart because how often do we do that
Mm.
and share from your heart and that is freeing. Yeah,
Yes. I love that. It is liberating.
yeah.
That is beautifully put, Anna. Thank
Yeah,
you so
yeah,
much.
yeah. And I do a lot of other small things on the side. But yeah, who knows? Like I'm still also a student, ever a student, and we'll see where life takes me.
Mm.
Yeah,
I love that. Thank you so
yeah,
much for sharing. We'll share your socials here under this episode in the links. And I love what you said about the surrender and the release that comes when we don't have to be fixed.
yeah,
Like, yes, all of this work in our 200 hour is about transformation, but not about fixing. There's nothing
yeah.
wrong with any one of us here, but there's um there's a kind of a moment where we release the energy. There's some kind of tension that like you shared in the very beginning of this call that when you took Jack's first
Hmm.
yoga class that you had a release of tension and tears were there and now it feels like you facilitate that for yourself.
Yeah, it feels, Hannah, it feels like this, like it's like a larger cycle over
Mm,
many, many years,
mm,
right? 9 years,
mm-hmm.
nine, a great number
Yeah.
has come to like completion, and it'll be a new cycle, but at least yeah, I'm grateful for this learning, like hard sometimes, but
Mm.
beautiful learning cycle of these past years.
Yeah. And less lonely now that there is community and you know how to
Yeah,
create community.
exactly. And
Mm,
that's what I want to say about the Happy Jack Yogi, the 200 hours as well. It's like there's so much, you offer so much. And it's almost like, I don't like the word like buffet. I mean, it's a buffet where we try everything.
mm,
And then, like take what resonates, which is what I did, and then move from there.
yeah.
And that is beautiful because there's so much. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. I love it. Thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing. Thank you for being here. You are amazing. I'm so grateful for you.
I'm grateful for you. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you. And thank you,
All the
everyone
best.
listening. Okay. Namaste, friends.
Namaste.